What if the battles you face are not only with the world outside, but with a hidden voice inside you? Carl Jung reminded us that within every woman lives an unseen masculine force, the Animus. Sometimes it inspires, but often it destroys. Today I invite you to look within, to confront that hidden man, and to reclaim the power that truly belongs to you. The journey begins with awareness, and it begins now. When this Animus is unconscious, it does not appear as a companion, but as a tyrant. It begins to speak in absolutes. You may have heard it in yourself or in others, that inner voice that suddenly declares, "This is the truth. You are wrong. Life must be this way." And it does so with such certainty that it silences every other part of the psyche. Jung pointed out that this hidden masculine, when not made conscious, can harden a woman's words and actions. Instead of her authentic self-expressing, it is this archetypal force that comes forward, clothed in the robes of logic, judgment, or moral authority. And the woman who is caught in this possession may not even realize that she is repeating borrowed phrases, ideas that do not belong to her heart, but to this ancient archetype within. To make this more human, think of a woman who longs to create art, but every time she takes up her brush or pen, the inner critic thunders, "This is useless, you will fail, what you create has no worth." That critic is often a voice of the Animus, destructive because it masquerades as truth. Or imagine a woman who loves deeply, but suddenly finds herself unable to trust her partner, projecting onto him all the negativity of her own unconscious masculine figure. Instead of relating to the real man before her, she is arguing with the Animus within. This projection destroys intimacy because she is no longer speaking with him, but with the hidden man inside herself. Carl Jung emphasized that the Animus is a double-edged force. It is not only destructive, it carries within it the potential for deep wisdom and spiritual strength. But before it can become a guide, it must first be recognized. Left unrecognized, it is like a shadow that darkens everything. In this shadow form, it robs a woman of her vitality. It makes her rigid when she could be flexible, cold when she could be warm, judgmental when she could be compassionate. The tragedy is that she believes it is she herself speaking, when in truth, it is the Animus using her voice. Education about this inner figure is the first step toward freedom. When women begin to learn about the Animus, to notice how it operates in dreams, fantasies, and sudden judgments, they begin to see that the tyrant within is not their true self. Jung often described individuation, the process of becoming whole, as a journey of relationship with these inner figures. Just as a man must meet and reconcile with his anima, the feminine within, so too must a woman face her Animus. But the confrontation is not easy, because the Animus wears the mask of authority. It speaks as though it were divine truth, and so it feels dangerous to question it. Yet, to grow, a woman must dare to ask, "Is this my voice, or the voice of the hidden man within?" Think of how liberating it is when this recognition happens. A woman realizes that the judgments crippling her creativity were never the final word. She sees that the bitterness poisoning her relationships was not truly about the people around her, but about the unintegrated masculine energy in her unconscious. In this moment of awareness, she takes the first step toward freedom. She no longer has to obey the destructive commands of the Animus. Instead, she can choose to dialogue with it, to learn from it, and to transform its destructive power into something creative and wise. Carl Jung believed that without this work, without this conscious relationship to the Animus, a woman could never fully step into her own wholeness. She would forever be at the mercy of an inner figure she does not know. That is why he called the Animus not only a problem, but also a path. The very thing that destroys so much when made conscious can also give so much. It can provide courage, spiritual insight, and the strength to act with conviction, but only when it is faced, not ignored. Then is not merely an abstract point of psychology. It is an invitation to every woman listening to examine her inner world. Ask yourself, when you hear the voice that criticizes, that judges, that destroys, does it come from your heart or does it come from the Animus? Do you recognize when you are possessed by that hidden man? Awareness is the doorway. It is only by knowing that he is there that you can begin to take back your power, to transform destruction into creation, and to reclaim your true voice. Carl Jung saw this pattern repeatedly. He noticed how women would speak of their fathers, husbands, or lovers in ways that reflected not just reality, but a psychic distortion. He realized that these distortions were the work of the animus, the hidden man within, taking over and expressing itself through projection. For the woman in this state, the inner and the outer blur together. She believes she is speaking to the man in front of her, but in truth she is speaking to the archetypal figure lodged deep in her unconscious. It is as though a shadow steps between her and the other person, and she cannot truly see them for who they are. This is why animus possession destroys so many relationships. Imagine a woman who has carried within her for years a hidden masculine that constantly criticizes. Whenever she is with her partner, she hears this inner voice. He is weak. He is wrong. He does not know what he is doing. Without realizing it, she begins to treat him as though these thoughts were true. She snaps at him, belittles him or closes her heart to him, believing she is justified. But what she is responding to is not his actual behavior. It is the animus inside her, projected outward. The man, in turn, feels attacked for things he never did. The relationship begins to crumble, not because of external circumstances, but because of the invisible drama of the unconscious. Jung explained that when the animus is unconscious, it tends to act as an autonomous complex. This means it behaves like a separate personality, with its own will and agenda. In relationships, this autonomy becomes dangerous because it hijacks the woman's speech and perception. Instead of warmth, she radiates hostility. Instead of curiosity, she imposes judgment. The man before her becomes confused, asking himself, "What did I do to deserve this?" He cannot understand that he has become the screen upon which the archetype projects itself. To humanize this even further, consider a simple everyday example. A husband forgets to take out the trash. In reality, this is a small mistake, easily forgiven. But if his wife is possessed by her animus, the response is not mild. Instead, she lashes out, saying things like, "You never do anything right. You are useless." The intensity of her reaction far exceeds the situation. This is because it is not the husband she is speaking to. It is the inner masculine voice inside her that she has not yet faced. The poor husband carries the burden of an archetypal conflict he has no part in creating. Carl Jung taught that the way out of this destructive cycle is recognition. Until a woman sees that the voice belongs to the animus, she will always believe the fault lies in the man before her. Awareness allows her to withdraw the projection, to say, "This hostility is not about him. It is about the tyrant within me." The moment she can separate the two, the spell of possession begins to break. She can then relate to her partner as he truly is, rather than as a distorted reflection of her unconscious. But projection is powerful, and often we resist withdrawing it. Why? Because it feels safer to blame the outer world than to confront the inner forces that terrify us. To admit that the cruelty comes from within, that the judgment is our own, is painful. Yet Jung reminded us that without this confrontation, relationships will always suffer. The woman will feel alone, misunderstood, abandoned, not realizing that she herself has erected the walls through which no one can pass. In therapy, Jung often worked with women to identify the figures of the animus in their dreams. These figures would appear as fathers, priests, kings, or even groups of opinionated men. By recognizing these dream images, women could begin to see how the animus colored their waking life. Jung saw this as an educational process, bringing light into the dark corners of the unconscious so that projection could be dissolved. Once the projection is withdrawn, the relationship has a chance to breathe again. The man is no longer burdened with archetypal weight, and the woman can see him with clarity, perhaps for the first time. This is why the animus is called destructive when unconscious. It does not merely whisper in the ear of the woman, it reshapes her entire perception of reality. Relationships break not because of a lack of love, but because love cannot survive under the constant assault of shadow projections. The tragedy is that both partners suffer. The woman feels victimized by the very voice within her, while the man feels unjustly attacked by accusations that make no sense. Both live under the rule of the unseen tyrant. Carl Jung did not describe this to condemn women, but to reveal the universal law of the psyche, that what is unconscious will always be projected, and that the work of individuation requires withdrawing these projections. To humanize this keynote is to see it not as theory, but as an everyday reality in countless homes, friendships, and marriages. It is to recognize the hidden dramas that play out beneath the surface of arguments and misunderstandings. The animus, when unconscious, is a destroyer of connection. But when recognized, it becomes an opportunity for growth, a call to turn inward, and a chance to free both partners from the weight of projections. This is the educational power of Jung's insight, to reveal the invisible chains, so that they may at last be broken. Imagine for a moment a woman caught in the grip of animus possession. She may feel compelled to speak with absolute certainty on every topic, even those beyond her knowledge. She becomes rigid, convinced of her correctness, unwilling to hear another voice. To those around her, she may seem domineering, argumentative, and strangely detached from her natural warmth. This is the destructive face of the animus. It enslaves by reducing the living richness of experience into dead concepts and rigid dogmas. It tells her what to believe and how to act, often with a cold authority that silences her authentic self. In this form, the animus is not a companion but a tyrant, standing between her and her creativity, her relationships, even her own inner truth. Carl Jung described how the unconscious masculine in women, when not integrated, speaks with the authority of the logos, the word, the law, the principle. But this authority is dangerous when it arises from the unconscious. It becomes an absolutism, untempered by experience or compassion. The woman then finds herself enslaved not by external chains, but by an internal voice that claims infallibility. She might dismiss the wisdom of her own body, the tenderness of her emotions, or the insights of her intuition, because the animus speaks louder, demanding obedience. In this state, she has lost her freedom. She has become, in Jung's words, possessed by the archetype. Yet within this same force lies immense potential. Jung observed that the animus, when brought into consciousness, is not merely a tyrant, but also a mediator to deeper truths. Where the anima guides a man into the depths of feeling and soul, the animus can guide a woman into clarity, courage, and wisdom. It can give her the strength to speak her truth, to defend her values, to take action with conviction. When transformed, the animus becomes not an oppressor, but a liberator. It lends its energy to the pursuit of knowledge, to spiritual insight, and to the courage needed for individuation. To make this human, think of a woman who has struggled for years with self-doubt, always silenced by the critical voice of the animus. As she begins to work consciously with this inner figure, perhaps through dream analysis, journaling, or therapy, she realizes that the harsh criticisms were disguises. Beneath them was a force trying to push her toward excellence, toward the discovery of her own authority. When she no longer obeys the voice blindly, but instead dialogues with it, she transforms it. The same energy that once enslaved her with dogma now fuels her ability to stand firm in her values, to speak with clarity, and to pursue wisdom with passion. Carl Jung emphasized that this transformation is not automatic, it requires awareness and effort. The unconscious must be made conscious. Without recognition, the animus remains a destructive force. With recognition, it becomes a partner in growth. Jung saw this process as central to individuation, the lifelong journey of integrating all parts of the psyche. For a woman, this means not rejecting the animus, but redeeming it. It means seeing that the rigid dogma that once silenced her can be reshaped into an inner guide that encourages her to seek truth and wisdom. Consider also how this transformation affects relationships. When the animus is unconscious, it damages connection, as the woman projects hostility and judgment onto the men in her life. But when it is integrated, the animus no longer needs to dominate others. Instead, it lends her the strength to engage in genuine dialogue, to speak her mind without aggression, to love without projection. In this way, the animus becomes a bridge rather than a barrier. It supports her in becoming more whole, more authentic, more capable of relating as an equal. The danger and opportunity of the animus reflect a universal truth that Jung repeated often. What we do not face in the unconscious controls us, but what we face becomes our ally. The animus is a perfect example. As long as it remains in shadow, it enslaves, it dictates, judges, and imprisons the woman in rigid beliefs. But when faced, understood, and integrated, it offers liberation. It becomes the inner masculine strength that allows her to navigate life with wisdom and authority. To bring this closer to lived reality, imagine two women. The first is unconscious of her animus, She spends her days criticizing others, convinced she alone holds the truth. She alienates friends, undermines her partner, and feels increasingly isolated. She cannot see that it is the animus speaking through her, enslaving her in dogma. The second woman has faced her animus. She knows its voice, recognizes its tone, and refuses to be dominated by it. She listens, questions, and transforms it. As a result, she speaks with authority but not arrogance, conviction but not rigidity. She is respected for her wisdom and loved for her authenticity. The difference between these two lives is not circumstance but consciousness. Carl Jung's genius was to reveal this hidden dimension of the psyche, to show that the destructive forces within us are also our greatest opportunities for growth. The animus is dangerous, yes, but only when it rules unseen. When we turn toward it, when we recognize its presence and work with it, danger becomes possibility, and enslavement becomes freedom. This is the paradox that lies at the heart of the animus, that the same voice that silences us can also teach us to speak with truth, if only we dare to face it. To grasp this transformation, we must first understand what individuation really means. Jung taught that every human being carries within them not just a conscious self, but also vast unconscious layers filled with archetypes, instincts, and forgotten memories. Individuation is the process of bringing these unconscious parts into relationship with consciousness, so that a person no longer lives as a fragmented being but as a whole one. For a man, this often involves discovering and integrating his anima, the feminine within. For a woman, the path leads her into confrontation with the animus. He is the gatekeeper of deeper wisdom, and unless he is faced, he will block her path to wholeness. Imagine a woman at the beginning of her journey. She lives under the weight of the animus without knowing it. His voice criticizes her every move. You are not good enough. You are foolish, you will fail. Or he speaks in dogmas, the truth is this and nothing else. She believes these words because she does not yet recognize that they come from an archetype within her. In this state, the animus is destructive. He limits her, cages her in doubt, and blinds her to her own potential. She tries to find fulfillment outside herself, in relationships, in achievements, in approval, but she feels hollow because the inner conflict remains unresolved. Carl Jung often said that the unconscious is not only a repository of darkness, but also a reservoir of potential. The animus, for all his destructiveness, is also a bearer of gifts. He represents courage, clarity, and the power of discernment. He can be a guide toward wisdom, but only if the woman stops fighting him blindly or submitting to him unconsciously. She must turn toward him with awareness. This act of consciousness is the beginning of transformation. Instead of letting the animus dictate or destroy, she begins to ask, "What do you want from me? What truth are you trying to point me toward?" In doing this, she starts to reclaim her power. The process is not easy, because the animus often appears in dreams and fantasies as overpowering figures, priests, kings, philosophers, or even hostile men who block her path. Jung advised his patients to engage these figures in inner dialogue, to treat them as real presences within the psyche. By conversing with the animus, by questioning him rather than obeying him, a woman begins to integrate him. Slowly, his voice shifts. Instead of criticism, he offers clarity. Instead of rigid dogma, he opens doors to wisdom. The same energy that once silenced her becomes the energy that empowers her to speak her own truth. To make this more human, think of a woman who has always been afraid to express herself publicly. Every time she considers speaking, the inner voice of the animus cuts her down. No one will listen. You are not worthy, you will embarrass yourself. For years she obeys this voice, staying quiet, hiding her ideas. But one day, she recognizes that this voice is not the truth, but the archetypal force Jung described. Instead of submitting, she begins to question it. She asks, "Why should I not speak? What do I fear?" In this confrontation, something shifts. The animus, no longer hidden, becomes transformed. The same energy that once silenced her now fuels her courage. She stands and speaks with conviction. This is individuation in action, the transformation of a destructive inner figure into a guiding one. Jung reminded us that individuation is not a path of rejecting parts of ourselves, but of integrating them. To banish the animus, to deny his existence, would only deepen the problem, because what is denied in the unconscious grows stronger in shadow. The task is to acknowledge him, to face him, to enter into relationship with him. In this way, the woman does not lose herself, but gains herself. She becomes more complete, not because she has destroyed the animus, but because she has transformed him into an ally. The implications for life are profound. A woman who integrates her animus no longer projects him onto men around her. She no longer sees them as enemies or tyrants carrying her unconscious hostility. Instead, she relates to them as they truly are, free of distortion. Her relationships become clearer, less burdened by projection. In her work, she speaks with authority without arrogance, acts with conviction without rigidity. She embodies a balance between the feminine and the masculine within herself. This balance is the mark of individuation, the flowering of a whole personality. Carl Jung believed that this work is not only psychological but also spiritual. In myths and religions across cultures, the encounter with inner masculine figures often precedes the discovery of wisdom, vision, and inner freedom. The animus, when integrated, becomes a bridge to the self, the deeper center of the psyche that unites all opposites. In this sense, the transformation of the animus is not only about personal healing, but about aligning with the greater wholeness of life. Thus, individuation requires the woman to journey into the depths of her unconscious, to meet the animus face to face, and to claim him as part of her. It requires courage, honesty, and persistence. But the reward is immense: the transformation of a destructive force into a guiding presence, the shift from inner slavery to inner freedom. This is the educational lesson Carl Jung left us, that the very figure who destroys so much can, when integrated, become the guide who leads us to our true selves. In the end, what Carl Jung taught us about the hidden man within women, the animus, is not meant to frighten us, but to awaken us. We have seen that when unconscious, this inner masculine becomes a destroyer. It speaks in absolutes, fills relationships with projections, enslaves women in rigid dogma, and silences the authentic voice of the soul. Yet we have also seen that the very force which destroys so much holds within it the seeds of wisdom, strength, and transformation. The animus is not an enemy to be banished, nor a master to be obeyed. He is a figure of the unconscious who must be recognized, questioned, and integrated. When this work is done, he ceases to be a tyrant and becomes a guide. He lends his energy to courage, to discernment, to spiritual clarity. He becomes a bridge to the self, that deeper wholeness which Jung saw as the true goal of individuation. So the call is clear: do not turn away from the voice within, no matter how harsh or destructive it may sound. Face it, engage it, transform it. For the journey to wholeness requires nothing less than courage to meet the hidden man and to claim him as part of your own psychic reality. And when you do, you will discover what Jung always emphasized, that the greatest enemies within us are also our greatest teachers, and that the path of individuation is the transformation of destruction into wisdom, of shadow into light, and of division into wholeness.